All right, so I am here to talk about the pyramid and the shafts underneath and all that stuff. So I originally happened across it following down the YouTube rabbit hole of Casper's site, and he talks about, hey, there's no real proof of it. And I agree with him, there's no real proof of it, but he didn't really follow down the rabbit hole deep enough. So I made this video as a response to just show him how far down the rabbit hole you had to go. And I kind of like the Y-Files and how they do their videos. They just let you decide. You can make up your own mind. I'm not so comical as this guy, but whatever. So let's get down to the business of it. So if we look at Snopes, there is no credible evidence that supports the claim of vast underground structures beneath the Egyptian pyramids. Cool. Yep. Nice and simple. Wander down the rabbit hole and I will show it all to you. So this is not an actual proof. This is a theory. This is just me wandering down the rabbit hole and trying to explain it because of watching a given guy do videos. And I thought, hey, I'm going to explain some of this stuff instead of writing a big ass long comment. So Snopes claims it's false. The Great Pyramids of Giza, done through a SARS radar technology released by these archaeologists, I guess, scientists. And Snopes says there's no real supporting evidence. Okay, so here's some transcripts taken from the videos of their conferences. And I just talk about how they got a bunch of their information. So these scientists used some SAR radar, which was an open source information from Cabela Space and Umbra Space satellites. And they used this open source data and plugged into a program developed by Felipe Bondi from their team, who's a leading expert on telecommunications, especially radar technologies and synthetic aperture radar, or SARS. He used to teach at a British university, so they say he's no novice about it. He specialized in software, created his own software from the free data that they had in order to create these scans and images that apparently led to the discovery. So they originally tried proofing this stuff using Mount Vesuvius as one way of proofing it, and then they later did a scan of Gran Sassos Laboratory. Gran Sassos Laboratory is a known space that has known dimensions and that, and they proofed it by taking these scans provided by the companies and finding their environments up to 1.4 kilometers down underneath the surface. After that, they went to the scans that they already had of pyramids Kipos and Kefren. So these synthetic aperture scans, in blue there, are used to define and find 3D spaces. This is all available on mdpi.com under synthetic aperture radar Doppler tomography, revealing details of undiscovered high-resolution internal structures of the Great Pyramid of Giza. You can go look at the article yourself. I'm going to breeze through it pretty quickly here. So they just kind of proof how they found this stuff and what the signals are. And then they go into some of the calculations they use to take the noise out of these signals from this other satellite company and the calculations they use to double check. So they go down through all these calculations. They explain a bit about how the tomography model works, how they get a topographical model by basing it on different angles, taking and correlating the data with the hollow spaces found. It's all based on basically vibrations from the Earth. So again, they go into more calculations they used. I'm sure if you plug this into the software, you'll get some understanding of it, or if you have some understanding of it. Then they also get into actual images, and they're just kind of proofing it for everyone to see. This was done back in 2022 on a previous ScansLat, and here they just proofed with known information about the pyramids. And then they said, hey, look, we discovered these chambers. Nothing's outlandish here. They're just discovering chambers around the known structures. So they never went, whoa, look what we found yet. They wanted to kind of make sure they really had their story locked down before they released anything else. We're talking, 3 years of research or whatever, software work and that, before they talk about the other places they found. So they talk about the imaging they used, how they had tested it, how they proofed it. I against other known pockets, and then they're showing you relations of images to the spaces and how they're looking at the data and correlating it all. Now we get down here and we see some of the rooms in that. And you can see this room on the very bottom where I think it's number 5 or 14. That room there is one of the rooms that would be relevant if there's a bunch of wells that are going down to the water table and beyond. That also apparently linked to a city underneath called the Rooms of Artemis, which is kind of the barrier between life and death. Anyways, this room becomes important because it also has the Great Sarcophagus, which is usually flooded and on the edge of the water table. And the Great Sarcophagus doesn't actually fit up this chamber on the side here. So they're like, how did it get here? And it doesn't fit down that hallway there. But there has to be some sort of entrance, etc., that they fit in because it just doesn't add up. It's a great kind of mystery. You can decide for yourself. But my point is, if you flooded the Pyramid of Giza by blocking the main entrance and allowing it to flood until it's airlocked, you would have to have this water drain out somewhere. They talk about it in their translations and that, about where it drains out and that. But in the end, you have to drain that bottom structure. And where would it drain out? Into some sort of structure underneath, because otherwise you had to pump it out. So they talked about how the pyramid with our known structures there kind of in the brown would eventually get airlocked at that point. And these king's chambers and queen's chambers would be used for resonance and harmonics to make healing rooms or healing water or whatever you want to place in there. So in the end, you have to have somewhere for this water to drain out, and it's got to go out the bottom because water goes downhill. So at some point, that lowest room had to have drainage somewhere else. That's what we're basing this theory on. Theory would lead to summarizing these giant, huge chambers, 643 meters down, that are incapable of being made by even today's technology. So we have Casper site talking about how we should do our own research and somebody else's messages on text on Twitter. And he's like, hey, if you have anything to add, give me something to add to this. So that's why I made this video. So I followed the YouTube rabbit hole to the funny oldie world where Johanna James does research and finds Trevor Grassi, the original poster of all this information, where it started it all. So Trevor Grassi talks about it a bit with her, and they both talk about these Malanga, Bondi, and that. And they have these videos, and I will link to her video so she can take credit. But these videos are of the press release and the actual conference in which Bondi and Malanga talk about all the stuff they've discovered. And then Trevor Grassi also releases some more stuff on his channel, which I'm still yet to get to, but should be pretty interesting. It's apparently a lot more of the information from Malanga and Filippo. So all I did was go to these guys' press release conference, and it's in Italian. So I just toggle the timestamps off, copy and paste. And I took both days, copy and pasted both of them, plugged into ChatGPT, had ChatGPT translate it for me, and that's how I got a lot of my information. So that's how I got into what they talked about, learned why they're saying there is such shafts, or how their hardware, software worked, and how it all was done, and then how they used all this free access data with the software program to be able to image a whole bunch of stuff. Here they talk a little bit about the sarcophagus and how it doesn't make sense. You can look at it or do your own translation in ChatGPT of all of the transcript to find it all. And then they touch on how it's impossible to build the pyramids with our current hypothesis of everything. And that's why they started looking deeper into it, because they're 40 to 70 ton stones, 20 million of them with 20,000 workers, 6 stones every minute or so. It's kind of far-fetched to accomplish it in 20 years. Would be hard-pressed with our technology nowadays to do it. And then they go into how the stones were cut with some fringe ideas on the technology, basically using frequencies and wavelengths to align the crystal lattice to soften the stone to allow it to be cut easier, and then also to create some sort of anti-gravity effect within the stone using sound and harmonics and stuff. They say there's quantum physics that links to it. I'm not a big on quantum physics, don't know everything, so leave that to someone else with more expertise. So Trevor Grassi put up a couple videos. Apparently they talked about that are supposed to show more about all that stuff. And then this site came up about harnessing electricity from Earth's rotation, which would link to a bunch of other theories about how the pyramids are power generators or healing or whatever. And Prince Sabu's disc was later linked into another topic about 1980s, 1970s, about how they bombarded it with sound and light, and spinning it turned it into a anti-gravity field that could suspend objects for brief periods of time while spinning it. And that would also lead into some of these theories about anti-gravity and how they move the stones so quickly, or we're able to get them around, or etc. So it's all kind of a big, interesting, gloss conglomerate story that you can look into for yourself and make up your own mind. I just quickly summarized it for you. Hope you find it interesting. So if you go back to their data interpretation, their 2022 press release on MDPI, it talks about how they thought the pyramids were for harmonics and that if you flooded them, and how they should be flooded, and they went into breaking down like how the tunnels would be flooded and how they would be drained. But one of the main things was there's a plug at the bottom, granite plug that was supposed to be accessed and that, in order to drain the rest of the pyramid. And that is where I kind of go, well, where did that water that was way down that chamber at the bottom get drained to? And that would be the reason we would find these giant shafts in 2 rows of 6, I think it is, running 640 some meters down. And you can do your own research and summarize from there. Can you believe using sound and lights or whatever to soften rock and align its crystalline lattice structure to cut it? Hopefully you can follow the story yourself. Thanks for watching. Hope you found this interesting.